I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And let somebody know that we're live here at the conversation with Al McFarlane. Wednesdays, we focus on economic development, business development, building wealth. And today, we continue that theme. I want to begin by bringing in my co-host for the day, my friend and a relative of mine, as a matter of fact, Kenya McKnight. Kenya, good afternoon. Good to see you again. And as always, you do such wonderful work with the Black Women's Wealth Alliance. If you're ready to come on, let's have you say a word or two about that. And if you're not quite ready, we'll just keep moving. Our guest today, Kenya and I are going to be talking to both Jeffery Robinson of Build Wealth Minnesota and Jeff Willis of Model Cities. And our theme is, as always, building wealth, building community. How do we make it happen for ourselves? So today we're going to focus on financial literacy, the role it plays in stabilizing families and building community wealth, and in closing racial economic gaps. And my two guests today, our two guests, Kenya and I, have as guests today the two dynamic leaders in the field. Jeffery Robinson is the Senior Program Director at Build Wealth Minnesota. He turned his own experience as a client into a mission to help others achieve financial stability through coaching, education, and housing support. Jeff Willis, who's an Economic Services Manager at Model Cities, focuses on empowering historically underserved communities through homeownership guidance and economic equity initiatives. Brothers, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. So good to see you. How you both doing, Jeff and Jeffery?
Mm-hmm.
Jeffery, come on first and say some greetings and remind people, where you are, where Build Wealth is, and how they get connected to you.
Thank you, Al. I'm Jeffery Robinson, a Senior Program Director at Build Wealth Minnesota, and we're centrally located in the wonderful, beautiful North Minneapolis on the corner of Penn and Plymouth in the Rock Building at 1256 Penn Avenue, and our address is 2121 Plymouth Avenue North.
Awesome. And Jeff, Model Cities, what's give us the backstory on Model Cities and what you do there.
Yeah, appreciate you. Jeff Willis, Economic Services Manager at Model Cities. You can find us. We're based in St. Paul on the other side of the river. One might say the better side of the river, but we won't start that conversation now. We're located in the Rondo neighborhood on University in Victoria, just off the light rail line. And Model Cities as a whole, we have services for people that are placed along the housing continuum, but economic services, we focus on providing financial education, financial support, coaching, as well as helping people navigate their road to homeownership.
Okay, well, let's talk about that proposition of wealth building. Both of you have probably wonderful stories of people who faced challenges in life and found answers that put them on the path to wealth creation. Jeffery, I love talking to you. We've talked several times. Jeff, this is our first time in conversation on the program, but let me have you, Jeffery, set the stage for a conversation. What is the dilemma that our community faces? How would you describe both our condition and our opportunity right now when it comes to being self-sufficient, self-reliant, mobile, upwardly mobile, and focused on, committed to creating intergenerational wealth? What's the state of the union at this moment, Jeff Robinson?
That's an interesting question, and the response and answers to that question, it changes based on a number of different factors that's going on in our communities, as well as what's going on the grander scale, the grander scale and stage in society. And I think I think we spend a lot of time focusing on what we don't have. and not enough time focusing on what we do have. And and that's the crux, at least, from my perspective in this particular season. Now, you might ask me about this 3 more months from now, Jeff Wills, and you might get a different response altogether. So, but at this moment, I see we spend a lot of time focusing on what we don't have. You talk to a person about starting a business for them and their family, and they start talking about the things they don't have. You talk to a person about buying a house and building generational wealth for their family, and they start talking about what we don't have. Well, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough savings. I don't have good enough credit. I don't have a rich uncle I can borrow the money from, like Jeff Wills, and put down his 20% of deposit on his house. But we don't spend enough time talking about what we do have. And and when we think about like the kind of state of where, the community that we're looking to impact, that's the community I'm talking about specifically, is it's a matter of what we do have, and getting the tools necessary to fully exploit what we do have to our advantage. And when you think about building wealth, just don't come. It don't come easy. It don't come by accident. It does not come by accident. If you don't have a strategy, and that's the one thing, right? I think like a lot of people, we get into a situation where so for instance, we say you self-employed or self-employment versus a wage earner. In my eyes, there's no difference. In my eyes, you still have a customer. As a self-employed person, you have to provide goods or services to meet the needs of your customer. As a wage earner, you have to provide services that meets the needs of your customer. It just happens to be that we call the customer the employer, or as a wage earner, McDonald's calls the customer the employer too, because if they don't have any customers, then they go out of business. And so with regards to a business and being a self-employed person, it's the same mindset, except what people fail to realize is that life itself is a business. And the same rules that's required for a business to survive and to thrive and to be profitable is the same rules that requires a family to survive and to thrive and to be profitable. And the number one thing that they say about a business is this: any business that does not have a plan plans on failing. Any family, any person that does not have a plan for their money, I can tell you what it looks like. They take $100 and they put $100 in their pocket. And at the end of the day, they say, man, I don't know where that money went. You know what they call that? They call it a bad manager. Because when a bad manager enters the room, all the employees leave because they don't want to be around them. You can tell if you're a bad manager with your money, because if you put $100 in your pocket and at the end of the day, you don't know where the money went, that means that you're a bad manager with your money, because even money does not like a bad manager. And your money has just instantly vaporized and flowed right into somebody else's pocket, whether you knew it or not. And so if you think you get to be a good manager without having good management systems and skills and developing those systems and skills, if you think that comes by accident, I can tell you right now, you are not, you might be a little naive.
Let me bring Kenya McKnight in. Kenya is my co-host today. Kenya, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. You caught most of, I think, Jeffrey's opening comments, and I wanted you to both, as always, introduce your work, your vision at Black Women's Wealth Alliance, and comment on this question as Jeffrey has posed a response to: how do we plan? How do we organize, and what it takes for us to be successful? How do we focus on not what we don't have, but focus on what we do have and what we intend to do? What do you think, Kenya? Just unmute.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. Good afternoon. Hello, Jeffrey and Jeff. Welcome. Kenya McKnight, CEO and founder of the Black Women's Wealth Alliance, owner of Zara. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm an investor, real estate investor and developer as well. Look, I think, it's really, I think, twofold. It's where you are, but really where you want to be. And, and in a realistic term, right? Somebody say, I want to be a billionaire like next week. Like, okay, so you'll do something really extraordinary for that to happen, a miracle overnight, quadruple. But really, for me, it starts with vision. Having a vision for not only yourself, but your life and your legacy, what happens beyond you, and how do you want to leave your people, whether it's your family, whether it's your, neighborhood or your community, or just a cause that you care about. Legacy is fundamental to wealth. And I think that, for me, I'm a visionary leader as well. I mean, I'm action orientated, but vision is everything. So how you plan is by having a vision first. And then from there, that will help you determine the best tools. Your style and, resources sometimes will determine the best tools and strategies that you use. I particularly use, wealth planning, right? I'm finalizing estate planning now, right? I have financial advisors. I mean, there's a difference for me between wealth literacy and financial literacy. So I think it's, what do you understand about wealth? There's a lot of education, a lot of learning that has to happen. But most of all, your vision is everything, because from there, it's going to drive you to, it should drive you to being curious about how to solve this problem, right? How to leave this legacy, and what tools are available and what education you need, but also how you invest the resources you have available to you right now to invest in that. And thinking about the short and the long-term game. Wealth is long-term, right? We may never fully realize it ourselves, but you can leave it for those, who you plan for. So I think that it's, but it's also not just monetary, right? That's a part of it. There's so many different ways that wealth shows up. And and so that's what I think. I think having a vision first and being connected to people, who have knowledge, information, and tools that can help you put that vision into action, that then materializes into, part of your wealth building. You muted, Mr.
Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. And that's a great beginning. Let's pivot from there to Jeff. Come in and talk about, and you have to unmute as well, Jeff. Talk about your work at Model Cities, particularly in housing and economic development. And, Model Cities has historically focused on what's called underserved communities, and priority has been home ownership guidance and economic equity initiatives. What does that mean? And I'd love you to respond to Kenya's delineation of the distinction between financial literacy and wealth literacy. How does that show up in your work? Or does that distinction really something that you use as part of your navigation in your arena?
Yeah, I want to start by maybe framing what the literacy component, how I'm interpreting that. That term, the financial literacy, is used quite often to explain the work that we do. There's some implications to that term, literacy, meaning that one is illiterate in that component. So we try to frame it for more, Jeffrey's note earlier about what the mentality is from the deficit mentality, what we don't have. Instead, we try to frame it towards exactly what Kenya was mentioning. Like, what is the vision? What are the goals that you're trying to work towards? From my experience, people are very quick to identify where the shortcomings are, and it takes a lot of pulling and guidance to help them identify the strengths. But yeah, so from the scope of financial wellness, wealth building, we really have a focus on building a stable foundation in which to build generational wealth on. But first, we like to look backwards. Before we cast that vision too far in the future, we like to spend time to look backwards. Like, what brought you to this point? What have you done well in the past? That's a hard question for people to answer, but we still continually try to ask that question to get that mindset shift about not everything in my life is deficit based. There are some things that I am doing really well. And once we are able to highlight those strengths, that is the foundation in which we build. So really, to kind of summarize, what does it mean to be successful? That means different things to different folks. Sometimes success is determined by what we were told success looks like versus what we really want for ourselves. So that's part of our process, is helping to identify, looking back, and really filtering out, what is my belief system? What are my goals based on what my family, what I value for myself versus what I was fed to believe?
Talk about Model Cities as an organization.
Yeah, okay. I don't want you to lose your thought, Kenya. I can come back to that question for Model Cities afterward. No? Okay.
Nope, I was going there. It's fine.
She said, talk about Model Cities as an organization. Yeah, so we're based in St. Paul. We have roots in St. Paul. We started out, a lot of folks know about Model Cities from our work in healthcare. So we've been around since don't quiz me on that. I know we've been around for a minute now doing this type of work. We separated since from our origins in healthcare and really have been narrowing our focus to serving people along the housing continuum. So within the walls of Model Cities, we own and operate an overnight emergency shelter, many units of supportive and low-income housing for rentals. And my space is the financial education, the homeownership education space, getting people prepared for the next step along the housing continuum from being a renter to a homeowner. So that support, we can probably fill a whole episode talking about what that support looks like. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Really full, robust, holistic support for what people need, not just in the X's and the O's about the finances, but also the emotional, mental support that goes into that shift.
Can you jump in whenever you want to?
Okay. No. I really was just going to, I realized I didn't answer part of your question, just to talk about the wealth work that we've done or do. Most of it is just really education. Mm-hmm. So we have some tools that we've published, but we really approach it from a historical lens as well. So love to go back and journey through the history of Black economics in this country. And so we have a series called Nomics. So we have Queennomics, Emeraldnomics, which is for youth. And then we have Kingnomics, which is for men, because we like to really go deep into looking at what is the history of Black people in economics. And, we find this interesting parallel thing of white violence next to Black economic success. Like, they go hand in hand. They don't, they're not disconnected, which is also part of what we're seeing right now, right? In this modern times of our Black politicians under fire, right? All these other things. And it's really, all the government contracting is up to, all this, so it's really interesting cycle. So we teach our folks about that, one. And two, we like to really look at the spending habits of our community, because education is key. And, having some awareness, because we do approach things from this deficit mindset a lot, right? It's a very common thing, but that's also white supremacy. That's how it shows up in us, right? That's what we've been trained to do. And how it, they beat us to this kind of state of being. And so our job is to unpack that by showing them this history and how this is not like a coincidence. So it's our job is to unpack intentional. It has happened over time through generations, and it continues to. And here's what it looks like today. And so that's important, but then also to journey back into their own family history about where they learned about money. What have they seen modeled? That sort of a thing. And identify what their current habits are and skill sets and behaviors, where their deficits. But like you said, where are their pluses? And then also, what are their goals about how they build forward? I think that's really important for our community, because we tend to take a lot of the burden on ourselves, right? We're some of the most conservative people I know, more than these Republicans. And so for me, I think it's part of that pressure that we need to release. It is also really about looking at what has happened and how that play a role into today and how we take it from here. And so that's fundamentally part of our wealth education work.
Jeffrey, I love my time with you because you personalize the objective reality. We can talk about concepts and talk about the big picture, but you always have a unique way of bringing it down to a personal story. And as you are listening to this conversation, which I think is rich, because we're talking about the philosophy, the underpinnings, the framework of both the condition and the opportunity. We're talking about the vision element that propels our movement forward. What are the thoughts that come to your mind, and how does that show up in the work of Build Wealth Minnesota? And you have to unmute too. There you go.
It does start with a vision. It starts with a vision, and from that vision, it ends with a lot of different questions. The vision is so important because it forces you to get away from your circumstances and to begin to dream again. And we ask our parents with kids, so what do you want? What's your dream? And their dreams become, okay, I want for my kids to go to college. I want for my kids to earn a great living. I want for my kids to do all of these successful things. But that's great. But the question was, what is your dream? What do you want? And we've been so disappointed by outcomes in life to where we've allowed circumstances and situations to choke our dreams and to prevent us from being able to sit back and really say and answer the question or begin the process with what Kenya has spoke about, with envisioning what does the life that you envision for yourself. Nobody dreamed about growing up poor. I have never had a dream of not being successful. And all of my dreams as a kid, and I'm sure Kenya, and I'm sure Jeff can testify, and I'm sure you as well, Al, can tell. And every single last dream that you had as a kid, you was the superhero. I don't care what ended up happening. I saved everybody. I saved mama. I saved daddy. I saved the little dog on the corner. I saved the little cat that was up in the tree running from the dog on the corner. I saved everything that was living when I was a kid. but somehow in life, we've allowed people in circumstance, situations in life to teach us into thinking that that everything is supposed to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, we can't move forward. If it's not perfect, if I make a mistake, I can't do it without doing that. And I always ask clients this question, like, okay, so when your child stood up for the fourth time and failed, and they failed to walk, did you in your mind say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna give you three more tries at walking before we decide that walking ain't for you?
Oh.
Anybody do that? So how many times do you get to fall down before you get back up, before you let a child and so such is the case as life. We've limited ourselves to how many times we can fall down before we can get back up to pursuing the things that we really want to. And because we've given ourselves such a small limit, such a small limit, what we ended up doing, we lack the capacity sometimes of being able to dream, which is why the Black Women's Wealth Alliance, the model cities, the Build Wealths of Minnesota, of the world, why they have such a strong presence and such a strong needs in our community, because for one, we can then get in front of a person and then just help them dream again. Even just to the point where, let me just learn how to dream again. Because now, if I can dream a thing, the only question I need to ask myself, once I dreamed it and I can put it down on a piece of paper, the only question I need to ask myself and answer it, like really answer it, is, okay, Jeff, you said you want to own a house in the Bahamas, right on the sandy shore. That's one of my dreams. You know what I got to ask myself next? Well, who does Jeff have to become in order for Jeff to be able to live that life? And once I answer that question, the rest of it starts getting easy. But it begins with, okay, you have to have a dream. Because the dream speaks to your heart, and your heart speaks to your passion, and your passion speaks to your love, and your love speaks to your desire. And the definition of a desire means is of and sire. It's of the Latin root of and sire. And the sire part means that you're cutting off everything else. So I'm sorry, the decision, because after you got your desire, then you got to make a decision. And the decision is you got to cut off everything else. The day is of and side is to cut off everything else. And once you make that decision on this is what I'm going after, that I can now pursue this dream, you cut off all other realities and you only pursue this reality. And you naturally fall into the person that you're supposed to become in order for you to live that life. But if you don't start off with the dream and you're not investing into that part of it, and so now we can really get at the real objectives of the work that we're doing with the wealth building, the model cities and the Build Wealth, the Black Women's Wealth Alliance and the model cities and the Build Wealth, which is actually getting back to the place of, we're going to equip you with the tools that you need in order for you to start back to dreaming again, and help you construct a plan in order for you to realize those dreams that you put down on this piece of paper. And from us helping you create and complete one dream, hopefully what we've done is showed you the system that you can now utilize and apply it to every other dream that you're having, and also teach your children, and your children can teach their children, and so that they can continue to pass it on, so that we can get to a place where we're building generational wealth.
That's wonderful and powerful. You know, as you were speaking, I had a gospel memory moment, and the memory was of the song. Maybe it's not gospel, but maybe it's old theater. But you've heard the phrase, "Go down, Moses, and tell old Pharaoh, let my people go." let them go, right? And the question becomes really, at some point in time, must we tell our people to let Pharaoh go? Have we been so conditioned and so ingrained with all these negative images of ourselves that it's difficult for us to come back to our own dream, our own imagination, an imagination that genuinely reflects legacy, antiquity, and future, because it's real, because it's of the heart and of the mind? How do we teach and show and model the confidence required, the confidence that I believe the three of you are talking about, that leaves our people with the feeling and the knowledge, as you said, Jeffrey, when you tell a child, third time walking, and he or she doesn't walk, the thought of him not walking never enters your mind or his. And so, like that, how do we engage in the process of thinking and knowing that the thought of our wealth is not negotiable? It's a fact. We simply must walk into it. And we recognize that as children learn to walk, as humans, as families, as adults, we simply must walk into the wealth of our being, the wealth of our purpose, and the wealth of our potential to accomplish and to serve each other and ourselves, our family. What do you think? Jeff, why don't you jump in there, and then Kenya, you come back and build on that.
Yeah, I'm real happy you highlighted that. I wrote that down. That was a beautiful metaphor to kind of paint that picture. And I think the way we do it, or attempt to do it, is, storytelling is really impactful. The vulnerability in sharing, we try to incorporate our own personal journeys in our coaching and in our education, in our workshop, in our classes, and setting the stage and modeling the being comfortable on being uncomfortable in talking about our stories and our paths. And, we try to compare and do that comparison piece. And that's a really tough habit to try to break, is that normalizing through that vulnerability in the storytelling, normalizing that not everybody's paths are linear, that it's not always one foot in front of the other. And by sharing people's story, building those strong relationships and sharing those stories and the many different pathways people take to reach that level of success, can humanize the whole process more and allow people to really buy in and commit to the marathon, not the sprint. Because that's exactly what it is for some folks. It is a marathon, it's a grind. And once we try to humanize that process and make failure, whatever, failure, you didn't see the air quotes when I first said it, but failure, making that okay. It's okay to fail. What did we learn from that failure? That's part of that process of really empowering the individual. And one piece that, I made a note regarding the deficit mentality, and some of the narrative around financial literacy in general is that because I don't know how, I won't. And that tells part of the story. But there's also, the work that all of the organizations here that we do, plus more, is we do a lot of advocacy externally to the systems that our clients and our communities have to interact with, to address the history of how we got here, to start doing things a bit differently so we can hopefully have the families that go through and interact with these systems have a smoother interaction than those that came before us.
Can you?
Yeah, I've been super sentimental lately around this notion of, I feel like we're just kind of revisiting, at least in our times, we're about to be met strongly with the same pressures that our ancestors faced. I keep saying he's coming for our communities, for our community. And, he's just getting through this other stuff, but he's coming. And what does that mean for us in these times? And on an economic front because we've gained a little bit, which is great. We need it. But every time, as I mentioned before, we gain, they come and they want to tear down, burn down, break down, and find all these ways to circumvent what we have. And that's, I wouldn't say I'm fearful. I'm aware and thinking and preparing for what that means for us as a community. And when we talk about wealth, we're watching a nice segment of the legacy our ancestors left be tore down right now, which is part of the wealth that we've been able to benefit from right now. So what's in my mind?
What do you mean?
Well, you think about the civil rights work, right, of
Okay.
the baby boomers, right? That's part of a legacy from our people that we benefit from, right? We've done a lot of work in this country to get to this point, and it looks like where folks are trying to put us back into, right, is a holding cell. I mean, he's talking about sending our men basically to El Salvador. This ain't just for migrants. He mentioned he's making note of the inner city. Who do you think he's talking about? This is blatant things he's saying. And so when I think about that, what does that mean for us and the things we're building? He wants to come back and rebuild the inner city. We're only in month 3, and look what has already happened. And we got another nearly 4 years of this. I'm expecting that he's going to come hard in the inner core where we are. And that means a lot of different things. And so the legacy being torn down, meaning all of the different policies, right? African Americans established the Small Business Association, right? That came out of our fight in this country. Well, he's ripping that apart. The civil rights, it's been compromised before he came along. We're learning about it. So just a couple examples of legacy things established by our ancestors and some of our current leaders that is on the chopping block that we no longer will have access to under this regime. So in my mind, I'm thinking about what are the necessary things we need to build now for the future, right? As part of an extended legacy, right? Of wealth, of culture, knowledge, resources, properties, what's happening, our investments. So we see a spur of Black entrepreneurs, particularly, let's look at Minnesota. Black entrepreneurs out the north side are leading development, right? Across the state, buying buildings, etc. I'm one of them, but I'm one of like 15 over here. So in one particular area. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but I guess what I'm really trying to get to is that it will be incredibly helpful for us to keep these things in mind as we are building for the future. This is not just about balancing our checkbook. This is not about just buying a house or a building, that's important, because every dime we have to manage it completely different right now, right? And we just wrote an article, right, about some of these things. So to me, how do we teach is, look, what he's doing and about to do going to teach us some really good things, I think, about what it means to support ourselves, right? And to create the necessary resources we need, whether it's schools, whether it's, all the things we're going to need to live, survive, and thrive in the next century. And so my mind is there, and we have to teach our people that, the importance of supporting ourselves, managing our resources. Resource management is essential. Back in the days, and I'll stop, we used to go out to eat as a treat. We used to wait for our mother when she got her check on the first of the month. She took us to a special place once a month. Every day outside of that once a month, we was eating food at home, right? We cooked on the week. Grandma cooked on Sundays, all these things. And so eating is a luxury. Eating out is a luxury every day right now, right? For some of us. And so we got to flip those basic habits right there. Resource management, shared living, and shared prosperity.
And so, Jeffrey, I love this conversation because, Kenya has talked about things that are both personal, micro, and macro. We talked about the systemic approach to understanding economy. You talked about a person's life is like a business's life, and there are similarities, and they both have the same needs to have checks and balances of accountability. And Kenya talked about in her family, how you manage differently and how we've gotten away from things. I think you addressed those same things earlier about how the personal accountability, the personal knowledge, the personal training, and self-control, self-management aggregates to a shift in the culture and a shift in the economy. And I'm wondering, how do institutions play a role in that? Institutions like Build Wealth Minnesota, institutions like Model Cities, institutions like Black Women's Wealth Alliance, institutions like Inside News, the conversation with Al McFarlane. How do we construct, create, manage, and grow institutions that reflect and support the individual aspirations in as much as those individual aspirations are reflections of our vision of community, of humanity, of resilience, responsibility, of ethical behavior? Jeffrey, what do you think?
I think it boils down to, we all have if I went on Black Women's Wealth Alliance website right now, you'll find a mission statement that's pointing to their vision based on the work that they do. You go to Model Cities, Build Wealth, you go to Inside News, you're going to find a vision statement. And so right now, we're all working towards a vision, and finding those intersectionalities where our visions cross and where our paths meet is critical for us working together, knowing that although, my mom, her and my grandmother, they used to do quilts together, and they would create pieces. And eventually these pieces would come together, and before you know it, you have a quilt that they would make. And my grandmother, she used to do what they call, I think she called them scrap quilts, where she would take all the remaining remnants from all the different quilts that they've made, and she would just make a quilt out of that. And it wouldn't have any different patterns, but the pieces came together. And so, like, for us, I might not be doing the same thing. Bill Wealth might not be doing the same thing that Wealth Alliance, the BWWA, is doing. But one thing I know for certain is that our pieces connect. One thing I know for certain is that Model Cities piece connect also in this quilt. One thing I know for certain is that Al's piece connects somewhere in this quilt as well. And as part of like our work and our work is being able to see where those intersectionalities exist, so that we can then form alliances that build upon not necessarily us doing everything, because nobody's going to do anything the same together, but working together towards a common vision, which that common vision is uplifting the Black community that we work within. And not just the Black community, but the underrepresented, low to moderate income community as well. Because this, it's Black focus, me, because we are impacted the most. Our money is everybody's money. But when everybody else go after their money, it's for them, and it's not our money. It's BIPOC when we're talking about Black problems or resources come to solve Black problems. And so, but for us, is where do we find these intersections at, and how can we work together? Because a part of building up our community is we have to represent the thing that we're teaching. we have to represent the community that we envision it on every point. And we have to be, and this is probably the most difficult part, Al. We have to be the standard bearer. And once we determine what the standard is, if this is the standard, then I have to be the standard bearer. I can't talk to a person about building up their credit and I don't have great credit scores. I can't talk to a person about putting together a financial management plan and I don't have a management plan. I can't talk to a person about investing if I'm not investing. I can't talk to a person about multiple streams of income if I'm not trying to develop multiple streams of income. One of our funders told Bill Wealth years ago, you know what they said? They said, you're doing a great job building wealth for the community, but you're not doing a great job building wealth for build wealth. You're not looking like the vision that you're envisioning. And so I say the standard bearer because so many people in our community that get elevated to some spots, they say, I'm not a role model. Then why are you here? If you're not here to be the standard bearer, and we have to be the standard bearer, we have to look like the part. And so it's not just a matter of connecting each other, but it's also about looking like the vision that we're envisioning.
I love to ask my guests to tell their personal stories. Jeff, you mentioned that in the work you do as a counselor, you also infuse your own sort of identity and story. So I want to take the last 10 minutes here and ask each of you to take 2 or 3 minutes and talk about whose shoulders you stand on. Who is it in your lineage, your genealogy, that pours into you, the Jeff Willis that you are today, and that you are bringing forward for the people that will come from you in the future? Jeff?
You said I only have 2 minutes?
Yeah, you have to do it. Elevator version.
Okay. Family and community was always instilled into me, and I can go back a ways, but the first person that came to my mind is my grandmother. She passed away a couple of years ago, and as such, family gets together from all corners of the earth to talk about what her legacy was. And I think about my work as it exists today and know that she will be proud in what I have dedicated my career towards. My grandmother did a lot in the fields of science and also a lot for her family as it relates to establishment.
I've never heard somebody tell me my grandmother did a lot in science. So unpack that for me, if you would.
You said I only have 2 minutes. This is the elevator pitch.
Now break the time constraint. Go ahead and talk.
Yeah, I won't be doing this justice. But I learned, of course, after my grandmother's passing, of what her contributions were to studies that were done. And I'm going to really butcher this, so my apologies, but it is not common, Al, to hear that comment because she didn't get necessarily credit for the work that she did. And that's, part of a larger conversation, but I learned how instrumental she was to certain studies that she initiated.
Who was your grandmother? What was her name? Let's say her name.
Her name is Josephine Spence.
Okay.
Yeah. But where I was going in the elevator pitch was she was very much selfless in the respect of creating space for people to be okay asking for help. And there's great power in asking for help. And in our workshops, I tell my stories about where I've asked for help in the past. Namely with, I've been on a journey these last several years of creating more holistic health for myself. But I know, whether it be my mental therapy I've been a big proponent of, that I learned is there's no silver bullet answer for anything. is you need community. You need multiple facets of support to get you to the place where you can execute that vision. So sharing my story and my background helps people, again, humanize asking for help. There's power in it. We need each other to be able to get to where we want to go as a people, as a community, and as individuals.
Amazing. What does your family originate? What's the origin story to your knowledge of your family?
Yeah, I'm born in New York, born and raised. My mother's side of the family, Jamaica.
Okay.
My father's side of the family, South.
Okay, great. Well, I'm a Jamaican as well on my father's side of the family, so we get that. Jeffrey, tell your story if you would. Kenya, I'll let you close us out.
Born in Mississippi, Mount Bayou, Mississippi. Small country, small town. I think one of the first Black cities settled by slaves in Mississippi. I'm going to say my grandfather. He was a strong man with a huge presence. And he transformed. He had wisdom, but he kept his wisdom like down to earth. He taught me everything I need to know about credit card when I was 13 years old, before I even knew what a credit card was. He said, "Jeffrey, a Black man's credit card is cash." And it spoke to our community being locked out from banks because he didn't have access to credit. So cash had to be your credit card. And so, because you didn't get loans from the bank. So you had to pay for everything with cash because we were, anyhow. And what he taught me was that he said, you never use more money. You never borrow more money from a man than you can pay back before the sun go down. And that's how you manage credit cards. You never put more money on the credit card than you can pay back before the sun go down. As long as you're doing that, you never get out of trouble. You never get into trouble with credit cards. I did it, and I didn't do it once. I got sued behind it because I couldn't pay him back. But that would be me. My role model would be my grandfather. His name was William Henry Murray. I tried doing a search for him back in the day not back in the day. I tried to do a search for him recently to go my family tree. And I went down a dark path, Kenya. I got to the 1870s and I couldn't find my people. I got to the 1870s and I couldn't find my people, man, and it broke my heart. And when I realized why I couldn't find them, I started crying. And my wife's like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, "Man, I can't find my great-great-grandfather." And I couldn't find them because they weren't people then. And the records that I was using, the census data that I was using didn't work for them. I had to go to chattel records. That's what I meant by the dark path. I had to go down a dark path looking through chattel records with horses and cattle.
Property.
To find me, to find a person that looked like me. This is serious. I'm the first generation of my family off the plantation. My parents were sharecroppers. My mother and father picked cotton. People think that you have to go back to the 1800s. No, it's right now, today. And if we're not conveying this to our people, I didn't mean this. I don't know where this is coming from. But if we're not conveying that the sense of urgency is today, we're doing injustice. Because it might not be your kids today. But I can tell you tomorrow's coming. And the same one that's coming after my kids, when my kids ain't enough,
Oh,
Yeah, this is serious work. And we decided to engage in the process, Al. And this is God's work though. And if you're gonna be doing God's work, hey, this is what it takes. This is what it takes. I'm sorry, man.
oh, perfect, brother Jeffrey. Michelle is saying, keeping it 100. Thank you so much. Can you take this out? Talk about your family, our family, and what family means to you. Whose shoulders do you and I stand on?
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey, thank you. And, same, right? Same on the ancestry. And, I couldn't go past my fifth grandmother, she was I found her, she was on the list, but only in being a female and an age. We had to guess that was who she was. So on one part of it, but so it's deep, and thank you for sharing and for your vulnerability in that, right? Because that is really what it is. And I think for me, I call myself an ancestor baby. And, because I'm, a reflection of their interests and the work that I do is commissioned by that realm 100%. So as much as I work to make it secular in the world it is deeply spiritual, and I work for God. That is 100%. And so it isn't work that I can just put into a structure and a process and a business plan and move it. When you meet purpose, you can't shape it. It shapes you. So it's, taking time to get to this place in this work. My great grandmother, Memphis Tucker, I'm the second generation born out of the South. We're from Columbus, Mississippi. And these is, when I look back in those records, what I see is Black people working hard to own property. I seen some indigenous heritage. I also seen, these has been entrepreneurs, right? Hustlers, trying to figure it out. I come from a long line of grandparents, men and women who did both, who were entrepreneurs, worked in the fields, owned stores, had their own little gambling halls, playing cards at 6 o'clock in the morning. These people got it any way they could to make sure they can provide for us. And I grew up with a bunch of cousins and working in her candy store. Fundamentally, this short woman from the South with a gold tooth who was called the Holy Ghost in church every Sunday, getting fanned on the front row because she was an usher, but cussed us out in the parking lot. Okay, it was too many of us and it was hot and we had too many questions. And she kept a bag of pennies with her in church that she gave us to make sure we would put money in the offering. That was essential. Never compromise on that. And even though we went around to the corner store, to the penny candy store, she would catch us. Sometimes we would make it, but she made sure that we gave. The giving heart, committed to her community. She was a housing activist. She took care of everybody. Everybody stayed with her. And this is who I grew up watching and watching her serve in her leadership. Strong woman, raised 4 generations of us serving her God, her community, and her family. And so I liken myself to her a lot. She's a big part of my foundation. She's the first God I knew, the first light I knew, and the hope that extended herself into my life that I still hold on to keep me going. And I'm part of a legacy for hers and a whole bunch of ancestors to do anything that I'm doing.
I'm going to call that a mic drop. Jeffrey, Jeff, Kenya, thank you all so very, very much. What a wonderful conversation. And I think this is the nature. This conversation is a conversation that moves us towards our genuine selves and towards our bountiful and prosperous futures. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.